Sarah Chen stood at her office window on the 45th floor, looking down at the bustling city below. Her reflection in the glass showed a woman in her early 40s, wearing a perfectly tailored navy blue suit that probably cost more than what most people earned in a month. But today, that same suit felt heavy on her shoulders. She turned around to face the massive mahogany table where 12 board members sat waiting. These were the same people who had helped her turn a small tech startup into Innovatech, now worth billions. The presentation screen behind her showed the company's impressive growth charts, but something felt off. "I've been reading the employee satisfaction surveys," Sarah said, her voice firm but troubled. "And I've been watching our people when they think no one's looking." She picked up a tablet and swiped through some photos. "Does anyone notice anything strange about our company events?" The board members leaned forward, squinting at the images she projected onto the screen. They showed various office parties and meetings, but it was clear as day. There was an invisible line dividing people. The executives and managers stuck together, while the support staff huddled in corners, looking uncomfortable. "We've created two different worlds within our own company," Sarah continued, her fingers drumming nervously on the tablet. "I built this company 15 years ago in my garage, eating ramen noodles and dreaming big. Now I sit in meetings where we spend thousands on coffee machines, while our cleaning staff brings thermoses from home because they can't afford the cafeteria prices." Mark Thompson, the youngest board member, cleared his throat. "With all due respect, Sarah, that's just how corporate structure works. We can't invite everyone to every meeting or treat everyone the same. There's a hierarchy for a reason." Sarah's eyes narrowed. She walked to her desk and pulled out an old photograph. It showed a much younger version of herself mopping floors at her university, where she had worked part-time to pay for her computer science degree. "I was that person once," she said quietly. "And somewhere along the way, we forgot that every single person in this building deserves respect." She straightened up, and suddenly her eyes had a spark that the board members recognized. It was the same look she had when she was about to do something either brilliant or crazy. "I'm going undercover," she announced. "For 3 months, I'll work as a janitor in our own company. No special treatment, no privileges. I want to see Innovatech through the eyes of our lowest-paid workers." The room erupted in protests. "You can't be serious. The shareholders will panic. This is unnecessary. Think about the risks." But Linda Martinez, the head of HR, was watching Sarah carefully. "You've already made up your mind, haven't you?" Sarah nodded. "My mother used to say that a fish doesn't know it's in water until it's taken out. We've been swimming in privilege for so long, we've forgotten what it feels like to be at the bottom. And that stops now." She pulled up another screen, showing a simple job application. The name read Mai Chen, using her Chinese name that few in the company knew about. The position: night shift custodian. "For the next 3 months, Sarah Chen doesn't exist. I'll be Mai, a Chinese immigrant who barely speaks English, trying to make ends meet." She looked each board member in the eye. "And before you try to talk me out of it, the paperwork is already filed. I start next week." The silence in the room was deafening. Through the windows, the sun was setting over the city, casting long shadows across the plush carpet. Sarah could feel her heart pounding, but she knew this was right. Sometimes, to fix a broken system, you had to be willing to get your hands dirty. Little did she know just how dirty things would get. The mirror told a different story now. Gone was the powerful CEO with her designer suits and perfect makeup. Instead, Sarah stared at a woman in a plain gray uniform, her black hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She had practiced dulling the confidence in her eyes, replacing it with the tired look she remembered from her college days of working late nights. Her transformation into Mai Chen started with small details. She wore worn-out sneakers that pinched her toes, unlike her usual comfortable leather shoes. Her wedding ring was replaced with a simple brass band bought from a thrift store. She practiced speaking with a heavy accent, stumbling over words she normally pronounced perfectly. "Time to go," she whispered to herself, picking up the battered handbag she'd carefully chosen for her new identity. The night shift started at 10 p.m., but she arrived at Innovatech's main building 30 minutes early, something she knew lower-level employees did to avoid any chance of being marked late. The security guard barely glanced at her ID badge, waving her through with the same dismissive gesture she'd seen him use with other maintenance staff. This was the same man who would stand at attention whenever she walked in as CEO. The difference in treatment made her stomach tighten. The custodial office was in the basement, a stark contrast to her corner office 45 floors above. The walls were a dull beige, the fluorescent lights buzzed constantly, and the air smelled of cleaning supplies and old coffee. 6 other cleaners sat in plastic chairs, waiting for their shift assignments. "You knew?" asked an older woman with gray-streaked hair, her name tag reading Carmen. Her voice was kind but tired. Sarah nodded, keeping her eyes down. "Yes, I'm first day." "Stick with me," Carmen said, patting the chair next to her. "First few nights are the hardest, but you'll get used to it." She lowered her voice. "Just try to avoid the 32nd floor when Mr. Wheeler's working late. He's not very nice to us." Marcus Wheeler. Sarah knew him well. He was a rising star in the marketing department, always perfectly polite in meetings. She filed this information away for later. The shift supervisor, a balding man named Bob, handed out assignments. "May, you're on floors 30 through 35 tonight. Bathrooms, trash, vacuuming. Carmen will show you the ropes." The service elevator creaked and groaned as they rode up, pushing their supply carts. Carmen pointed out which cleaning solutions to use where, which doors would stick, which executives liked to work late, and how to avoid disturbing them. It was like learning a secret language, a survival guide for the invisible people who kept the building running. Around midnight, Sarah encountered her first real test. She was emptying trash bins on the 32nd floor when Marcus Wheeler emerged from his office. He was on his phone, talking loudly about profit margins and market strategies. Without even looking at her, he kicked over his coffee cup, sending liquid spreading across the floor. "Clean that up," he barked, covering his phone's microphone for a moment. "And be quick about it. I have clients coming in early tomorrow." Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she reached for her mop, not from fear, but from anger. She'd seen Wheeler give presentations about company values and teamwork. Now she watched him walk away without a second glance, still talking about quarterly projections she knew were exaggerated. As she cleaned the coffee spill, Sarah noticed family photos on a nearby desk. A young woman smiled up at her, Maria from accounting, who had started as an intern and worked her way up. The photo showed her hugging her daughter at a graduation ceremony. Sarah remembered approving Maria's promotion herself last year. "Different world up here at night," Carmen said softly, appearing beside her with fresh paper towels. "Daytime, they all smile and say pretty words about respect and dignity. Nighttime," she shrugged, "we become ghosts." Sarah just nodded, but inside, her CEO mind was already taking notes, making plans. This wasn't just about observing anymore. Something needed to change, and she was beginning to see exactly how deep the problems went. The night stretched ahead, full of trash bins and vacuum cleaners, but Sarah Chen, hidden behind May's quiet exterior, was more awake than ever. 2 weeks into her undercover work, Sarah was discovering truths about her company that no management report could ever show. Her hands had grown rough from harsh cleaning chemicals, and her back ached from hours of mopping and scrubbing, but it was her heart that hurt the most. Tonight was particularly eye-opening. She was cleaning the glass walls of the conference room when she overheard Marcus Wheeler talking with his team inside. They were staying late, preparing for a big presentation, empty pizza boxes and coffee cups scattered everywhere. "Can you believe they raised the cafeteria prices again?" one of the junior executives complained, tossing a crumpled paper that missed the trash can completely. He didn't bother to pick it up. "Who cares?" Wheeler laughed, loosening his expensive tie. It's not like we eat that garbage. That's for the lower-level staff. He noticed Sarah, or rather, Mai, outside the glass. Speaking of which, look at our diligent cleaning lady. Hey you. He knocked on the glass. Make sure you get all the fingerprints this time. Last night's job was sloppy. Sarah kept her head down, pretending not to understand much English. Inside, she was seething. The cafeteria price increase had been her idea, meant to cover the costs of higher quality food options. She had no idea it was pushing the food out of reach for lower-paid employees. Later that night, in the basement break room, she learned more. Maria, the kind-faced custodian she'd met earlier, was sharing her lunch, simple rice and beans in a plastic container. My daughter's college tuition went up again, Maria sighed, offering Sarah some of her food. I took this second job to help her, but now with the bus fare increase and the expensive cafeteria, I barely save anything extra. The bus fare, another of Sarah's initiatives, reducing the company's transportation subsidies to cut costs. On paper, it had looked like a smart business decision. Now she saw the real impact. Around 2 a.m., Sarah was cleaning the HR department when she discovered something that made her blood boil. In the shredding bin, she found torn pieces of job applications. Putting them together like a puzzle, she realized they were all from internal candidates. Maintenance and security staff applying for office positions. All had been rejected without interviews. They never even look at our applications, Carmen explained when Sarah asked about it in broken English. They say we need degrees, but Maria's daughter works at the mall with a business degree because no one will give her a chance here. The night got worse when Wheeler's team finally left their meeting. They had left the conference room in complete chaos. Documents everywhere, spilled drinks, food crumbs ground into the carpet. As Sarah cleaned, she heard them in the hallway. Did you see her trying to understand my instructions? Wheeler laughed. These people barely speak English. How do they expect to move up? Back in their countries, they probably didn't even have running water. Sarah's hands tightened on her mop handle. She had grown up in San Francisco, had graduated top of her class from Stanford, and had built this company from nothing. Yet here was a man she had hired mocking people based on assumptions about their background. She pulled out her small notebook, the one she kept hidden in her uniform pocket, and added to her growing list of issues. Discriminatory hiring practices, wage gaps, lack of advancement opportunities, hostile work environment. The familiar CEO part of her brain was already forming solutions. Mandatory diversity training, anonymous application reviews, mentorship programs. But it wasn't enough to just make changes from above. She needed to understand more, to gather evidence, to know exactly how deep these problems went. Sarah watched as Wheeler's team left, their expensive shoes clicking on the marble floors she had mopped earlier. Patience, she whispered to herself in perfect English, before switching back to her accented speech as another worker passed by. Just little more time. The night was only half over, and Sarah Chen, hidden beneath May's humble exterior, had never felt more determined to revolutionize the company she had built. The annual Client Appreciation Gala was the most important event of the year at Innovatech, and even the night cleaning crew had to work different hours to prepare for it. Sarah, still disguised as May, arrived early to help set up the grand conference hall on the 40th floor. The space sparkled with crystal decorations and soft lighting. Cleaning staff rushed around, making everything perfect while trying to stay invisible. Sarah watched as Maria carefully arranged fresh flowers, her hands trembling slightly from exhaustion after working her day job at a local diner. Careful with those centerpieces, Marcus Wheeler barked as he strutted through the hall, not even looking up from his phone. They cost more than you make in a month. A few junior executives following him snickered at his comment. Sarah felt her face grow hot with shame, not for Maria, but for herself. She had approved the $50,000 budget for decorations without a second thought, while her own employees could barely afford lunch in the company cafeteria. As evening approached, guests began arriving in expensive cars and designer outfits. Sarah recognized many of them. CEOs, investors, and clients she usually greeted with handshakes and champagne. Now she was the one holding their coats and cleaning up their spills. The breaking point came during Wheeler's big presentation to potential investors. He was showing off Innovatech's new software platform, the one Sarah had actually helped design. Standing in the back of the room with her cleaning cart, she watched him take credit for ideas that weren't his. Our commitment to innovation starts from the top and reaches every level of our company, Wheeler declared confidently. We value every member of our team. Just then, his gesturing hand knocked over his coffee cup. Hot liquid spread across the polished table, threatening to stain important documents. Instead of reaching for napkins, Wheeler snapped his fingers at Sarah. Hey, you. Clean this up now, he demanded loudly, interrupting his own presentation. And try not to make a mess like you usually do. Sarah moved forward quickly, keeping her head down. As she cleaned, Wheeler continued speaking over her as if she were invisible. As I was saying, our company culture is built on respect and dignity. The investors shifted uncomfortably in their seats, watching the scene unfold. One older gentleman frowned disapprovingly at Wheeler's behavior, but said nothing. Sarah's hands were shaking as she wiped up the coffee, but not from nervousness. She was recording everything on her phone, hidden in her uniform pocket. The same phone that had recorded dozens of similar incidents over the past weeks. Later that night, as the party wound down, Sarah overheard Wheeler in the hallway, talking to his team. Did you see that cleaning lady trembling? Probably afraid I'd report her to immigration, he laughed. These people should be grateful we even give them jobs. That's when Maria, who had been quietly collecting trash nearby, dropped her bag. Papers scattered across the floor. Instead of helping, Wheeler deliberately walked through the mess, leaving footprints on the documents. Clean it up, he smirked. That's what we pay you for, right? Sarah watched Maria's eyes fill with tears as she knelt to pick up the papers. In that moment, something snapped inside her. She had seen enough. Tomorrow was the board meeting where Wheeler would present his bid for a promotion to vice president of operations. He had no idea that his worst nightmare was about to walk through that door, not as May the janitor, but as Sarah Chen, CEO and co-founder. As she helped Maria clean up the mess, Sarah patted her shoulder gently. Tomorrow, she whispered in her broken English, tomorrow everything change. Maria looked confused, but Sarah just smiled. She had all the evidence she needed. Now it was time to show everyone exactly who had been cleaning their coffee spills for the past 3 months. While her time as Mai was difficult, Sarah discovered something beautiful among the cleaning staff, a hidden network of support and friendship that touched her deeply. It started one night when she found Maria crying in the supply closet during their break. My daughter Emily, Maria whispered, showing Sarah a crumpled letter. She got accepted into the business program at the university, but her voice cracked. The scholarship only covers half. I don't know how to tell her we can't afford it. Without thinking, Sarah reached for her phone, her expensive one, not the basic model she carried as May. Maria's eyes widened slightly at the device, but Sarah quickly slipped it back into her pocket. That small mistake could have blown her cover, but what happened next showed her something remarkable. The next night, Carmen brought extra food to share. My son works at the textbook store, she said with a wink to Maria. He says he can get Emily's books at a discount. Another cleaner, James, mentioned his wife taught at the university. She knows about some emergency grants. I'll get the information for you. Sarah watched in amazement as her nighttime coworkers rallied around Maria. They were creating solutions together, sharing resources, offering whatever help they could. These were the same people who could barely afford their own lunches. During their midnight breaks, Sarah learned more about her fellow cleaners. Carmen had been an accountant in her home country, but couldn't get her credentials recognized here. James was taking online classes in computer programming, studying during his breaks. And Maria, it turned out, had brilliant ideas about improving the building's cleaning efficiency, drawing from her previous experience managing a hotel. One night, as they tackled a particularly messy floor after an office party, Sarah watched how the team naturally organized themselves. Maria directed people to different areas, making sure everyone rotated the heavier tasks. They had created their own management system, more efficient than any of the official protocols Sarah had approved as CEO. "You see that man?" Carmen pointed to a security guard walking by. "That's David. If any of us need to leave early for an emergency, he adjusts the security cameras so we don't get in trouble. And Anna in the cafeteria. She saves the leftover sandwiches for us instead of throwing them away." Sarah was discovering an entire underground support system. The maintenance staff had each other's phone numbers for emergencies. They swapped shifts when someone needed to attend their children's school events. They shared job leads, helped with translations, even pooled money when someone faced a crisis. Late one night, Sarah was struggling with a heavy garbage bin when James appeared out of nowhere to help. "We take care of our own," he said simply. "Because nobody else will." The moment that truly broke her heart came when she found out about the emergency fund jar hidden in the break room cabinet. Everyone put in whatever spare change they had. Maria had been reluctant to take money from it for her daughter's education, but the others insisted. "You would do the same for us," Carmen said firmly, pressing some bills into Maria's hands. "When my Carlos was sick last year, you all helped me. This is how we survive." Sarah watched as Maria hugged Carmen, both women crying softly. She thought about the company's official emergency assistance program, with its complicated paperwork and strict qualifying criteria. Meanwhile, this simple jar and the trust between coworkers was doing more good than any corporate policy she had ever written. That night, writing in her secret notebook, Sarah added a new section: Community and Support Systems. But instead of listing problems, she wrote down things to learn from. The maintenance staff had created something her expensive management consultants had never achieved: genuine teamwork and mutual support. Tomorrow would be the board meeting where she would reveal herself. But now she understood that exposing Wheeler's behavior wasn't enough. The real challenge would be preserving and learning from this beautiful support system she had discovered, while fixing the broken corporate culture that made such a system necessary in the first place. Soon, she promised herself, watching her coworkers share a package of cookies someone had brought in. Soon you'll all have more than just each other to rely on. The big boardroom buzzed with excitement on Thursday morning. Marcus Wheeler stood at the front, clicking through his presentation slides, confident about his upcoming promotion. Board members checked their phones while he talked about growth strategies and market expansion. Nobody noticed the cleaning lady quietly entering with her mop and bucket. "And that's why I believe I'm the perfect candidate for Vice President of Operations," Wheeler was saying, his perfect smile gleaming. "I understand this company from top to bottom." "Really?" Sarah spoke in her normal voice, making heads snap up in surprise. "From top to bottom?" Wheeler froze mid-sentence. The remote control slipped from his hand, clattering to the floor. Board members stared open-mouthed as the cleaning lady walked to the head of the table. "Meh." Wheeler stuttered. "What are you?" Sarah pulled off her cleaning cap, letting her hair fall freely. She straightened her posture, dropping the submissive stance she'd practiced for months. "Actually, it's Sarah Chen. Your CEO. Remember me?" The room erupted in gasps. Linda from HR knocked over her coffee cup. Wheeler's face turned ghostly white. But you were on a sabbatical," he stammered. "No, Marcus. I was right here, watching, learning, and recording." Sarah pulled out her phone and pressed play. Wheeler's voice filled the room. "These people should be grateful we even give them jobs." More recordings followed. The mockery, the deliberate coffee spills, the cruel jokes. With each clip, Wheeler seemed to shrink smaller in his expensive suit. "Mr. Wheeler talks about understanding our company." Sarah addressed the board, her voice firm. "Let me tell you what I understand after 3 months as a janitor." She pulled up her own presentation. Pictures flashed across the screen. Maria studying accounting books during her breaks. Carmen helping new employees learn the cleaning routes. James fixing broken equipment to save the company money. These people you mock. Sarah continued, looking directly at Wheeler. Carmen was an accountant in her country. James is learning programming. Maria has better management skills than half our executive team. She played more recordings. Discussions about raising cafeteria prices, denying promotions without interviews, ignoring maintenance staff suggestions that could save thousands. While Mr. Wheeler was taking credit for others' work, Sarah's voice cracked with emotion. Our cleaning staff created their own emergency fund to help each other through crises. They split their food with hungry coworkers. They cover each other's shifts when someone's child is sick. Wheeler tried to speak, but Sarah held up her hand. I'm not finished. Yesterday, you spilled coffee and demanded I clean it while you talked about company culture and respect. Today, I'd like you to clean this up. She deliberately knocked over her water glass. The room held its breath. Wheeler didn't move. No. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Too beneath you. Because that's the problem, isn't it? You think some jobs, some people, are beneath you. She reached down and cleaned the spill herself. No honest work is beneath anyone, Mr. Wheeler. But treating people like they're beneath you. That's beneath everything this company stands for. Sarah stood straight, every inch the CEO, despite her janitor's uniform. You're not getting the promotion, Marcus. In fact, clear out your desk. We don't need people who build themselves up by pushing others down. Wheeler stumbled backward, his career crumbling before his eyes. You can't. I've brought in millions. And treated people like they were worth nothing. Sarah cut him off. That costs us more than any deal you've ever made. She turned to the board, her eyes blazing with purpose. I have a new presentation to make. It's about rebuilding our company culture from the ground up. And we're going to start by learning from the people who really understand what teamwork means, our maintenance staff. The board members sat up straighter, paying more attention to the woman in the cleaning uniform than they ever had to Wheeler in his designer suit. Outside the boardroom windows, the sun was rising over the city, marking the start of a new day and a new chapter for Innovatech. 1 year after Sarah's dramatic revelation, Innovatech's main lobby looked very different. Where there used to be just a security desk, now a large screen displayed photos and names of employees from every department, including maintenance staff. The monthly Innovation Star photo showed Carmen beaming proudly, recognized for her new accounting software training program. Sarah walked through the building, not in a designer suit or cleaning uniform, but in simple business casual clothes. She smiled, remembering how Forbes magazine had called Innovatech's transformation the Great Awakening in their latest issue. The cafeteria, once a symbol of division, was now bustling with activity. Executives sat next to maintenance staff, sharing tables and conversations. The new sliding scale pricing meant everyone could afford good food. Those who earned more paid more, subsidizing meals for lower-paid workers. Sarah. Maria called out from her new office. She now headed the Employee Relations Department. Her daughter Emily's university graduation photo sat proudly on her desk. The mentorship program numbers are in. You won't believe the results. The program, matching maintenance and support staff with executives for skill sharing, had been Maria's idea. Look, she spread out the reports. James from our old cleaning crew. He's now junior programmer, and he's teaching the IT department about efficient systems based on his maintenance experience. Sarah picked up another success story. Carmen had gotten her accounting credentials recognized and now worked in finance, while still helping with the maintenance staff's emergency fund, which had become an official company benefit program. In the main conference room, where Wheeler had once mocked his cleaning staff, a training session was underway. New executives sat listening to veteran maintenance workers, learning about ground-level operations before starting their positions. Company policy now required every manager to spend 2 weeks working in maintenance, cafeteria, or security. Remember, the trainer was saying, no position is below anyone. We succeed together, or we fail together. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from her assistant about Marcus Wheeler. He was now working at a small startup, having been rejected by every major tech company. Apparently, his attitude towards support staff had become infamous in the industry. Sarah didn't feel joy at his downfall, only hope that he had learned something. The afternoon board meeting looked different too. The grand mahogany table now had 20 seats instead of 12. Representatives from every department, including maintenance and security, sat as equals with executives. They discussed a new proposal: free online courses for all employees and their children. The cleaning staff's emergency fund taught us about community. Sarah addressed the room. Now it's time we became the kind of community they already were. Later that evening, as the sun set over the city, Sarah visited the basement break room, now renovated to be as comfortable as any executive space. The old cabinet where they'd hidden the emergency fund jar stood as a monument, with a plaque reading, "Where real leadership began." A group of employees gathered there, sharing stories and snacks. Among them was a new janitor, looking nervous on his first day. Sarah watched as Maria welcomed him, showing him the same kindness she'd once shown Mai. "You know what's funny?" Maria said to Sarah as they walked to the parking lot together. "People keep asking how we created this amazing new company culture. They don't realize we didn't create it. We just learned it from the people who kept the old culture from breaking them." Sarah nodded, remembering her nights pushing a cleaning cart. Sometimes you have to go to the bottom to understand how to lead from the top. Outside, the Innovatech building shone in the evening light. Through the windows, you could see people from all levels working, talking, and laughing together. The Forbes magazine on Sarah's desk called it the most progressive workplace in tech. But Sarah knew it was simpler than that. It was just what happened when a company finally recognized that every job had dignity, every person had value, and true leadership meant lifting people up, not pushing them down. As she got into her car, Sarah saw the night cleaning crew arriving for their shift. They walked in with their heads held high, greeted by security guards and executives with equal respect. The invisible walls had finally crumbled, and something much stronger had taken their place: real community.